So in this example, let's create a simple expense report where we can record a bunch of different expenses, say for a business trip, and get a total for the amount spent. So I'm going to choose the most basic blank template here, and then I'm going to start creating my table. Now I'm not going to use any kind of header column here, so I'm going to delete that. And the way I do that is I could select the column and I can go to Table, Delete Column, or I can click here and delete the column that way. Then I'm going to create a couple of column heads here in the header row. So let's say for an expense report we have a date for everything. We've got a description and a cost. And that's the only three columns I'm going to have. So I'm going to grab this little handle here and shrink the table down to those three. I'm also going to grab the line between columns B and C and increase that because I know I need more room for the description. Now let's go and name the table, and we'll just double click in here and select all, and we'll call it expense report. Now let me add some data. So I'll start off here with a date. I'll give a description and how much it cost. Go with another date here and their cost. And then a third one just to fill it in with some examples. Now let's get rid of the rest of these rows because that's all we've got now. So we're starting our expense report with these three items, and we can shrink it down by grabbing that handle there and just collapsing it to three rows of data. We can also do some things with the formatting. So I'm going to select the column here, all column A, and I want to change the cell formatting to a date style. And notice I'm selecting the entire column, which includes that header cell that says date in it. But Numbers are smart enough to know that when you're changing something like this, to not change that cell there. So I changed the date and time, and I'm going to change the date and do a format that makes the most sense for me. So maybe just something really basic like the month and day. Likewise, I'm going to select this here, the column for cost, and I'm going to change it to currency. So now I get a dollar sign and I get two decimal places at all times. So now I've got my expense report going, and it already is very useful because I can add more items to this. So I'll just hit return here. I could do it anywhere in this last row. Hit return and enter a new date. Now just because the formatting here is the name of the month and the day, we don't have to use that formatting when entering in data. I can do 9/4 for instance. I'm going to hit tab to move over, and you can see it formats it for us just fine. And I'll enter a new one in here. You can see this also does the formatting just fine. Let me hit return again, and I will enter in a new item. And now at this point, let's say it would be useful to have a total of all of this. So I'm going to add another row here because I want to make a footer row that's going to have the total. So I could hit return to add another row. I could click here and add a row below. I could also do that under table here and add a row below. So I've got an extra row, and now I'm going to go to Format Table, and I'm going to say I want there to be one footer row. So that's why it was important to create that. Otherwise it would have taken this last row with actual data in it and made it a footer. Now I'm going to enter a formula in here. I could compute the total of that by hitting the equals key and then clicking on a cell plus this cell plus this cell plus and etc. and get the total. And that works. But what works better is if I use the sum function. So I do equals and then sum parenthesis and I grab all of this. So C2 to C6 close parenthesis. And that works too. And it will even work if I add a new row. It will automatically add the new row by increasing that range. So I can go with a return here and add $10 and you can see it added it there. So we'll add that. What will be even better is if I use the sum formula, but instead of doing a range I simply clicked on the column header there. So just C, or it's going to use the term cost since that's in the header there. And I get the same thing. Numbers is smart enough to know that if I'm doing a sum formula for an entire column, don't use a header and don't use a footer cell. It just grabs all the data in between. And now it doesn't matter what I insert in here. It's always going to compute everything I need for the sum, all of the data stuff. So you can see it adds that in. So I can continue to add new rows and that sum will keep up with it. So now that we have that, I should save this file. So I'll go to File, Save, and I'll save it out. So I get back to it anytime I need and add more items to this expense report.